When I share my story, it's about more than solving the mysteries of our solar system. I represent the curious spirit of the nation, the Choctaw Nation. I am our past. I am our present. I am our future. I am all of us. When we share, we become one because our stories make us more. Stories keep our culture alive. See them and share them at togetherwe'remore.com.
Hollywood! Lights! Camera! Action! Hollywood Brown! CD Lamb still running! It's a corner! CD! For the TD!
People don't know what it is to be champions. Oklahoma invented it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Through the Keyhole. It's an Oklahoma football podcast. I'm Brady Trantham, and with me is not four people. Well, I mean, three people. With me is two other people. Payton Guthrie, say something.
Hey, I'm here.
I've never seen your beard that long.
It's very long and very white. A lot of people are saying if I'm trying to pull like a Santa Claus in July type thing. So I'll be getting this addressed very soon.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, what are you going to do? Is this like growing the beard out until the Spurs make it back to the playoff?
No, this is me just being really lazy. To be honest with you, that's probably about it.
That'll work. That happens. I can't grow facial hair like you. So I wish I could. I'm not that handsome. Alan Kinney, say something.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Matt Burton will not be here because I assume that now that the Thunder have a title, they're now going to do post-game shows for their summer league games or
Live
something.
From Vegas.
Yeah.
Matt Burton.
No, they're doing
2
Utah.
months in Vegas.
They
are. Yeah,
this is the
right.
Salt Lake Summer League.
Oh, God, imagine that. That sucks, dude. Imagine being a player. It's like, oh, you're going to go to Salt Lake instead of Vegas,
Yeah, and I think if Sam Presti would have it his way, they would only do it in Salt Lake City and not also do it in Sin City, which would be just a week later. But yeah, Nikola Topic is tearing it up so much that we will have no Matt Burton tonight, unfortunately. But did anything happen in the last few days, guys? Anything at all? Like I am reaching for topics. Did anything happen, Payton?
Well, luckily, sometimes the podcast gods provide. They provided. We have the long tenured athletic director of the University of Oklahoma has announced his retirement in 2028, doing like a little sub step down in the next year. So Joseph Castigli-gone announced he is stepping down from the AD of the University of Oklahoma.
Oh boy, looks like today's going to be exciting for Through the Keyhole because this would be something that we've discussed a handful of times, whether it be like the specific topic or on rants and tangents from other topics that are loosely connected to the original subject matter. But the day has finally arrived. Joe Castigli-gone, like Payton said, announced his retirement, where he will be undergoing like athletic director duties for the foreseeable future until OU finds his successor. And then after that, he'll be like an athletic director emeritus and I'd still be around just like everybody else that had a level of success in the Bob Stoops era. They do not leave. They linger. They linger and linger and linger and linger. But before we get into that, I want to point everybody in the direction of keyholepod.com, where you can find Alan Kinney's Blatant Homerism column. He wrote a lot about Joe Castigli-gone yesterday and was super busy. I was personally super busy at work yesterday. Did not have a chance to read it. I'm glad I did because, boy, Alan and I are going to fight today. Alan, I feel like there was one paragraph specifically aimed at me. I'm going to be narcissistic and assume that was written for me.
Well, okay, well, I'm gonna confess that it wasn't, but let's see here. Is it the one about the?
It's the one above the screen grab that Payton put out on Twitter. So it's the one right before the how you would view Castigli-gone's.
Let's
tenure.
see. Oh, so would it be check out the OU affiliate message boards?
Yes.
And social media accounts, on the other hand, and you get the impression there's much rejoicing in Soonerland. Some of the more vocal OU fanatics see Castigli-gone as the AD who has been in charge during a 25-year drought of national championships in football and the brains behind the program's deterioration in the last
Ding,
three
ding, ding,
seasons.
ding, ding. Oh, well. But hey, that's the whole point of writing something and sparking debate, because just saying the same stuff over and over again is boring, and Alan's not going to do that. I'm going to try and not do that on the Monday post, Tuesday posts on patreon.com/the keyhole. But if you've not had a chance just yet, once you're done listening to us, go read Blatant Homerism on keyholepod.com. That's the free website. And then, like I just mentioned, I put out my thoughts after I read Alan's, and I kind of sat back like everybody else and absorbed all the thoughts and prayers and content from yesterday's big announcement, and put down my thoughts on the Tuesday post on patreon.com/through the keyhole. So if you are so inclined and would like to help support Through the Keyhole, we would greatly appreciate that. And just as another reminder, you don't have to pay for the first month if you just want to try it out, see what we're all about with the extra stuff. You can be a free member for a month, I believe, on Patreon, and you get extra articles, you get extra podcasts. Payton is in the, right in the middle of his summer conditioning off-season podcast series, where you've got Temple coming up next, Payton? Vaunted Temple, the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I've got Temple coming up. They will be, what am I trying to say here? We were recording on Thursday. Hopefully, if everything goes well, and then we release it on Friday to get a little overview of the Temple.
Yeah, so he's just going to let you know like where to eat in Philly, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's very nice. Like I work in tourism, so it's very nice to know what to expect when you go travel to a new city. So that'd be great. Please tell me you're going to get Ian Boyd on for Texas. He's my favorite Longhorn.
No, probably not Ian. Probably not Ian if we're going to do the name drops. Honestly, getting a Texas blogger is usually one of my harder pulls to join onto an OU podcast, even though it seems to be Oklahoma is the only thing they talk about. Getting them to join the podcast is sometimes a little bit difficult.
If you were making a Mount Rushmore of Texas Longhorns, I would put Ricky Williams on there because I'm a Dolphins fan and I loved me some Ricky Williams, even though he quit and did something for a few years. And then he came back, but he was awesome when he came back. But even before that, he was awesome. I think I'm putting Ian Boyd right next to him. I madly respect Colt McCoy. Guy's a gamer, and like I respect that. He was maddening to watch OU play against, but we did beat him at least once. For number 4, Darrell Royal, because he's a Sooner deep down. So that's my Mount Rushmore. So who are your Mount Rushmores for the University of Texas patrons and listeners? I want to know.
Yeah, let's toss it over to the viewers. I'm not as reversed in or whatever. Whatever I'm trying to say. I'm not into the Texas lore as much.
Alan, did I miss a Longhorn of old that probably deserves to be up there?
Oh, I'm sure there was somebody that was a real badass before integration that has a national championship.
We're off
ring
the
out there
rails
somewhere. But yeah, no, I mean that's a pretty good list.
I'd also throw Earl Campbell on there because he wanted to be a Sooner, but fate intervened, fortunately, for our friends to the south. Okay, now that we've got some of the housekeeping out of the way, did I miss anything? Oh yeah, 5-star rating and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do that. It would greatly help the show. I've been looking at the metrics for the first time in a few months because 'tis the off season, but just to get a better look of where we are, and we're slowly but surely increasing some numbers in a positive way, and I'm very appreciative of people that tune in either for the first time or the 1,000th time. Thank you all so very much. We all appreciate it here. But I think that's coinciding with everybody realizing next week is Media Day week in the SEC, and football season is just around the corner, and we're all excited. And of course, it wouldn't be the University of Oklahoma if there wasn't a gigantic off-season departure. It seems like June, July is just the time where the big figureheads of the former unholy triumvirate, that is David Boren, Joe Castigli-gone, and Bob Stoops, they're like, now's the time to like say that I'm done. Is not after a football season, not in December, now. So that boom, 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 headlines. Look at me. Put my fedora on TV. No, I'm just kidding, kind of. But Alan, let's start with you because you wrote the column. Joe C. announces his retirement. This is gigantic news for reasons everybody is very aware of. He's been the AD at OU for what, 28 years?
28 years. I think.
28 years.
Yeah.
Came over from Missouri at a time when OU was in an absolute wreck, disarray, chaotic situation. I mean, outside of men's basketball, and I know Kelvin was pretty good in the mid 90s. I think the late 90s and like 97, 98, they weren't particularly good. I could be wrong, but then they of course rebounded in 2000, 2001, 2002 with the Hollis Price, Quantas White teams. But outside of that, maybe wrestling was good. I don't know, but like OU athletics, especially with football at the absolute forefront of awfulness, was in such a state of disarray. And then Joe Castiglione comes in and completely turns the ship around. So, I mean, I'm going to give you the floor, I guess, to set up everything. I don't know if we necessarily need to go year by year and bullet point by bullet point of what Josie did, because everybody listening to the show knows that he's really good. I recognize that he's very good at his job and has been very good at his job. But I'm going to let you open up kind of the conversation, as it were.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's funny because I think that I don't think that Brady is really that much alone in his opinion or of the way things have trended recently with Castiglione's tenure. And but I was trying to give a fairly balanced perspective of it, just based on the idea that literally every person in the media that was talking about this was talking about, oh, we've got a legend who's retiring. And, you know, I think going back to when Castiglione got the job, I mean, I can remember what was going on at OU. I remember what it was like. Now, I mean, I wasn't as plugged in or whatever as I, just age wise or whatever, but it was a disaster. It was, how people talk now about like Maryland's athletic department, for example, being completely off the rails from a financial and managerial standpoint. And, I mean, stuff like Maryland, I mean, anyway, that's what we're talking about with OU. OU's debt at the time Castiglione took the job was 80% of its operating budget. I mean, that is a disaster. And Castiglione, I mean, regardless of, I think you could make a good case that, maybe that was going to turn around on its own. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is he was the one that was there in charge. And he went about taking a more, for a lack of a better term, business oriented approach to managing the athletic department. That included firing the absolute worst head coach I've ever seen in my life, a football head coach in John Blake, and bringing in Bob Stoops, which was, far from a sure thing. I mean, I also remember the other names, though, that were getting a lot of run at the time. And it was Rick Neuheisel and Bobby Wallace from Temple and Dennis Franchione. I mean, and so, you got to give him credit for getting that hire right. But I think, though, that the stat that Joe Harris, I mean, talked about today about the size of OU's athletic department right now, the quality of the athletic department. I mean, that all started back then. I mean, you're talking about across the board, things weren't poorly managed, but especially with the football program, obviously, with coming out of probation and the series of coaching misfires. You had an AD and Steve Owens, who was on the job for about 18 months before he stepped down. I mean, all in all, you put it together, look at where they were then versus now, and it's pretty miraculous where OU is altogether.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, OU was in a very bad spot, and Joe Castiglione completely wizarded his way to such an extent that now OU is a top 10 athletic department, profit generator. They're just, printing money at this point. That's all well and good. Payton, is there anything that you wanted to add to your perspective, like to open up this conversation so that we can then spiderweb jump on each other and yell at each other, rant and debate each other as we get through this one?
Yeah, I mean, don't take this for gospel. 'Cause this is what I think I read this on Twitter. But University of Oklahoma, before Josie was hired, had 17 national championships total. And under Josie's tenure, they won 26. It's just, I believe before Josie, Oklahoma was a football school, right? And only a football school. And Brady, and this is what I want to point towards you because you talked about you can be great at both things. Josie then made Oklahoma an athletic school. We can win at every sport. We're not just handcuffed to one. Oklahoma played in 4 national championships in an 8-year period with bump suits, goes to 3 playoff appearances, and they're hitting kind of a rough spot, obviously, right now. I mean, football pretty much is better than most. But obviously, softball wins 7 national championships on his watch, right? I mean, women's
Yeah.
gymnastic, men's gymnastic. Last year, Oklahoma was winning outdoor track. I mean, stuff you would not associate with University of Oklahoma. I mean, they're climbing high into the much thing that we always laugh about, University of Texas. They're getting into that Directors Cup conversation and things like that. I mean, he built out the University of Oklahoma's athletic department in its entirety in a way that was completely unforeseen and completely never been done before he stepped foot in Norman, Oklahoma. And I think that's commendable. Now, if Oklahoma had taken every single resource it had and only put it in the football, yeah, you're probably looking at a few more national championships. But the breadth of University of Oklahoma, the breadth of Oklahoma sports would be severely dampened at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, that's definitely a way to think about things is you get to this black and white situation of, okay, like Peyton's absolutely right. I mean, OU athletics over its first 100 years, primarily became a football power. We all know that. Basketball had different levels of success in men's basketball. I mean, they were a part of the first 2 Final Fours. Bruce Drake was a really good head coach in the 40s and 50s. And of course, Billy Tubbs in the 80s. Baseball won a national championship in the 50s. They got back to Omaha, I believe, in the 70s. And I'm trying to think if anything else pops up. Women's basketball was almost nixed, and then Title IX saved it, and then Sherry Cole built it into kind of like a blue blood, a modern blue blood for women's basketball, if there is such a thing. Softball, of course, we know where that is. So yeah, you're absolutely right. OU athletics across the board has seen a level of success that is unparalleled. I think consistently over any time period than before Joe Castiglione's time. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. And OU, as an institution, when it looks at its athletics, because of our location, because of our history and buy-in, fan base, support, all those things, OU can realistically say that they can be great or elite at anything that they set their mind to. So where I will kind of disagree is it doesn't have to be one of those two things. It doesn't have to be like you're either going to be elite at one sport, the sport that we are all here listening to through the keyhole for, the football one. You can be elite at that one and then average to randomly good, but overall just average at everything else. Or you can be great across the good to great across the board. But that elite thing in the football sport, it might be a much more fewer and further between than you were accustomed to. Considering OU won their first national title in 1950, the longest drought before now was 19 years from 56 to 74 when Switzer won his first one. He won in 75 and then won 10 years later. And then there was a 15-year drought from then to the 2000 team. And now we are at 25, going into 25 years. So maybe like that level of thinking is we sacrifice being elite at football in a manner that we would all want to be great at softball and great at women's basketball and really good at men's basketball and good at baseball, and great at gymnastics, men's and women's. I disagree with that. I think OU can be elite at football and still great at softball and still great at women's basketball and still great at gymnastics. Those things should not be one or the other, in my opinion. The conversation for Joe Castiglione and his legacy at OU it's either one of two things. You're either talking about his job as the athletic director, which implies all the athletics, or you're talking about what he's mainly known for, and that's being the de facto GM, CEO, Sam Presti of OU football, hiring Bob Stoops, ultimately handing the keys over to Lincoln Riley, hiring Brent Venables, all the success of the early 2000s, the up and down success of the 2010s, and now kind of the more down than up success of the 2020s. And that's where he's going to call it a career. And so that's where I want to start the debate, guys, and whoever else wants to jump in, please go ahead. But any good he did, I'm sorry, like it has been at least balanced out by staying too long, not pressuring Bob to fire his brother because we are still trying to dig ourselves out of that problem. And my biggest piece of evidence is that when Lincoln Riley left, Joe Castiglione's idea to lead our program was we need to have a head coach to fix the defense. Well, why does the defense need fixed, Joe? We don't need to get into that. Like, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to hurt any feelings. And that to me is a part of his legacy too. This is a football school. I love that softball's great, and softball should and can be great at a football school. I want basketball to be better. I want it to have a new arena on campus. I would prefer, like in an ideal situation, I'd rather it be on campus. But if the entertainment district is going to happen, then so be it. I want the basketball team to have an awesome arena to play basketball in. I want all those things and OU to be an elite football school. And we haven't been an elite football school since the late 2000s. Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts put lipstick on a pig because of how bad those defenses were. And we, by virtue of playing in a crappy conference that we eventually left because they were so crappy, we got to the big stage and were soundly and utterly defeated because we being Joe Castiglione and the OU intelligentsia just said, no, Bob, you can do no wrong. We won't force you to do the hard thing and fire your brother, even though it's very obvious that it's keeping OU from number 8 and number 9 and so on and so forth. And we're still trying to dig ourselves out of that. And I get that when someone retires, it's the time to like praise them and talk about all the good things, but we are in the midst of trying to fix something that should have been addressed over 10 fucking years ago. And it's maddening that we are a 6-7 team praying that a 29-year-old offensive coordinator and his Washington State quarterback, who I think is good and everyone thinks is good, is going to save us. And so, like, I hope they're good, because if not, then oh boy, that will be on Joe Castiglione's legacy too. And for that to be like potentially the final chapter to his story, not good. So, I mean, whoever wants to jump in, please do and tell me I'm an idiot.
Well, okay, I'll start off with, the idea that Castiglione didn't do a good enough job pressuring Bob to fire Mike. Like, what does pressure in that scenario look like?
Either retire or fire him.
Okay, so now retire or fire him. I agree. There's somebody else that Joe Castiglione answers to. That would have been David Bourne at the time.
Joe Castiglione's the vice president of an athletic director is the vice president of a university.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, that would be his call.
What do you think David Bourne says when he goes up? We need to fire Bob.
Actually, that's a good question. What was David Bourne worried about at the time? Let me double check. Was he worried about anything? 2015. Let's not get in there. But continue.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, my point being, like, I mean, Bob reported also to David Bourne, not to Castiglione, which is again its own thing. But I mean, I think that all these criticisms are warranted. But then again, like, I don't know. I mean, would you rather be like Auburn? Would you rather be Texas A&M? Like, I mean, OU's in a spot where, I mean, yeah, okay, I agree. They haven't been in the league for too long. But again, like, the amount of time I think or whatever that would take to rebuild that. I mean, I don't know. That's not a particularly good. I mean, the thing about it is like in the last few days, I mean, I've been actually excited about seeing Castiglione move on just because he's been there for so long. But I guess my word of caution as always is like, yeah, OU wasn't winning national championships, but the amount of success even that they had from 2010 to today, that run is still very, very rare. And if it was so easy because well, they're playing in an easy conference or what have you, everybody would do it who's in an easy conference. There'd be more evidence that it was easier to sustain than what OU has done. So I don't really. I mean, I think that my one caution is that when you have a guy who's did it that well for that long, there's kind of an assumption that things are going to automatically be better. I don't see it that way, and that doesn't and but that's also not a good reason for to change, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Peyton, do you want to add anything or go off on a separate tangent? I'm taking notes because I mean, if you guys can't tell, and I want everyone to know this, I'm going to yell some. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at our co-hosts. But obviously this is something that I have been very passionate about for a long time, and I'm glad that it's over. So none of us hate each other. I just want to get that out of the way. But Peyton, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the cardinal sin for you in Josie is not firing Bob Stoops or pressuring him to fire Mike or saying if you're not going to fire Mike, then you got to go, right? And Bob, from your point of view and a lot of people's point of view, held the university hostage when you wouldn't fire Mike. Now it's not only would he would not fire Mike, he wouldn't fire anybody, right? I think he'd only fired. I think his first assistant coach he fired was
Willie Martinez.
Willie
Is that
Martinez in season, and then it was Heupel and
Well, I mean,
Jay
that was one of those
Norvell?
ones where it's like he wouldn't even go so far as to fire Willie Martinez. It was like, hey, you got to find somewhere else to go,
Yeah,
and
it was
yes.
the Bob
uncomfortable.
Stoops. It was the Bob
Yeah.
Stoops thing of you've got another job. Because if you guys remember, I remember there being like a big, in Peyton, you might remember this because I think we knew each other at the time.
Mhm.
There was like this big internet, like Discord message board rumor that Mike was going to get hired away by LSU. I think
Yes, yeah, he tried
2015,
to get him. Yeah,
2016,
yeah, yeah,
2017.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
He
that
was down
didn't
in
happen.
Dallas to take a thing. Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember when it didn't go down, I'm like, he's not going to fire him
Mhm.
because he's going to suck next year because he sucks. And then no one will want him. Like he's just here forever. And yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because even I think, 'cause the Mike Stoops thing just became obviously toxic. Because I remember like Sart talked about hiring him as a
Yeah.
linebackers coach and everything. I mean,
I think
his agent.
announced it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the next day we've changed our mind.
Yeah.
Twitter got
We
him
someone
fired.
someone called somebody called somebody. No, I mean that does seem to be the cardinal sin for you, obviously at that point in time, which is presumptuous. I mean, which not which is totally fine to have. Because I remember it was like Bob would continually to win these things of like who would I want to coach for or who I want my son to coach for because he had never fired anybody. And the first time he actually fired someone was his two offensive guys right after Oklahoma had like a horrible defensive showing. Right. And that's obviously that burnt the bridges for Josh, burnt the bridges for the who was wide receiver coach, the co-OC,
Norvell.
Norvell at Colorado State now. Uh and it became an issue, and then he was able to kind of Riley obviously re-energized everything at that point in time. That was that lull from what 2009, well, let's say 2010 to 2014, like a 4-year lull for Oklahoma. I will never say 2000 2008 was a lull for the football program. I mean,
No, it wasn't.
four national championship appearances. I mean, you're going good at that point in time. Then you had a 4-year, 09 injuries happen, 10 you have some changeovers, and then there's full. I mean, there's from 10 to 14 is kind of like, all right, let's see if Landry Jones can do something this time. And then they don't get a quarterback. And, there's like multiple seasons where you have no quarterbacks. But then the 2013 game happens, Sugar Bowl, obviously a game that's Brady does not like because it potentially saved Bob Stoops' job for a little bit longer. Um, so on and so forth. And then, as Alan and I've mentioned, said about Bob, is finding that fastball again, coming in there, making the correct hire, coaching these guys from 2015 to 2017, re-energizing Oklahoma through the offensive coordinator, obviously, and kind of handing the keys over him. Now you don't know what's going to happen in the future at that point in time, but I think we all kind of agreed Riley was a good hire at the time, was recruiting really well, all that kind of stuff. So if you really look at it from a football perspective, um, Josie hasn't made a bad hire quite yet. I mean, I guess in hindsight, you can say Riley was you would take the success Riley brought to you and hope you could handle the fallout a little bit easier on that side of it. But it's really a 4-year window with Bob at the end, and it's the Brent Venables stuff at this point in time. Now, being able to shepherd Oklahoma through the Big 12, through its collapse, reorganization, collapse again, and then getting a seat at the table at the SEC um, is life-saving. Like he saves the program in 1998 or whenever he's hired, I can't quite remember, 99, 98. And then he saves the program again by getting them a seat at the table at the SEC and getting that announced. And from what we understand, this is an Oklahoma podcast, but from what we understand, kind of guiding and initiating those talks and then getting Texas on board with that at that point in time. From what we understand, right? From that side of it. I think those two things alone, regardless of the short-term impact of Brent Venables not doing well in the SEC, is commendable and is something you put at the top of the byline, right? He Shepard, he saves Oklahoma twice, in my opinion. One in the short term with Bob, and then the second one in the creation of the athletic department and creating a full actual athletic department, and then two, getting Oklahoma in the SEC at that point in time before the collapse of the sport that we've seen when it comes to all these other conferences. On the basketball side of things, I mean, you've got multiple Final Fours, multiple conference championships, and baseball's doing well. I mean, everything is just doing well. And maybe it's kind of a thing where it's not elite, right? You're not winning national championships in football. The one thing that we all generally care about is just through the Keyhole Oklahoma football podcast. You'd want to see national championships. And I would argue his guidance through the beginning part of this NIL process was poor. Obviously, he was speaking about things that have happened, about settlements and agreements and court decisions, potential unionization later down the line, and he did not have any interest in doing the wheeling and the dealing that was going on at the very, very beginning of this era. But I just don't think it's enough for us to say, thank God the bad times are over. I don't think that's the case. I think it's thank you for everything you've done. The school just needs new blood, and it needs new blood throughout the entirety of everything in the athletic department, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, look, as like a general rule, I think I'll bring this up every once in a while. I mean, yeah, like when we're in the off season and we have time to think, that's when I get mad about 2008, or that's when I get mad about the mishandling of the 2014, 2015 off season and the coaching staff firings and the lack thereof and all that. When you get into football season, my whole brain shifts into like, try to get number 8 now, like just try to. And the second that OU wins their 8th national championship, I don't think I'll really care about all the shit that I've complained about via podcast formats, for the last 10 years. I truly don't think I will. It multiplies that anger when we haven't gotten there yet, because then it makes all the examples or the situations where we had a chance to get it, whether it be 2003, 2004, 2008, and then the 2017, 2018, 2019, and then even some like years where we didn't get to a national title game situation, but we might have squandered it because we had a bad assistant coach coaching one side of the defense, and it kept us from our potential. That's when it makes it worse. If OU wins their 8th national title in 2025 or 2026, that will be completely moved on. I'll have a better view of Bob. I'll have a better view of Joe Castigli-gone. But we're not there yet. So that's why it's, I mean, I said it in the Tuesday post. I don't think Joe Castiglione's bad. I don't think he's a bad athletic director. He did so much good for this university. He did so much good for all the sports. He did good for the football program. Moving to the SEC, I think was inevitable. If Allen or me or Payton were the athletic directors, we would have moved to the SEC if we were able to, probably earlier. But he gets that credit until we just get back to the mountaintop. It just makes all these like mistakes that you guys are pointing out. That's like a 4-year period of his otherwise really good 28-year long tenure, 4 or 5 or 6 season slide or whatever time period you're using. Well, it doesn't exactly equal or balance out his overall career. And that makes sense mathematically. I'm just, when you're throwing out finances, Alan, I get it. I know that it's important. But that reminds me of what Nebraska fans would tell OU fans on Twitter after they moved to the Big Ten. And even though it was very clear Nebraska was just nowhere near where they had been. But you'd hear Nebraska fans say, well, we make a lot more money in the Big Ten. It's like, who cares? Are you spending
But we're talking
that money?
about Brady. We're not talking about, oh gosh, this is great, they're getting all this more money. We're talking about solvency. We are talking about like the difference between having to hire a guy like John Blake versus actually being able to compete for a good coach, being able to have quality facilities. OU was on the, like 80% debt compared to the operating budget. That's crazy.
How much of that was because of the previous 8 seasons?
I think you'd say that probably, I think that they said for like more than a decade, they were operating at a loss.
Yeah, and it all makes sense to me why they were. And it all makes sense to me why we climbed out of that. It's just pure and utter success on the field. OU did not make back all their money and pay off their deficit and write a magical, big, beautiful bill and then suddenly get in the, what is it, the black or the red? What do you want to be in? I'm not
want to be in the
accountant.
black, yes.
Okay. And then suddenly get into the black. And then they won their 7th national title. Like that happened first. And then I assume they probably got way more profitable and in a better place financially. OU in the late 80s and the in the 90s, they were dealing with a lot of stuff that they were trying to clean and fix. And in the meantime, having to coach and like run a football program. And it was kind of secondary because they were more concerned with cleaning up their reputation. So much so that even into the Joe Castiglione era, you had Pastagate stuff because we don't want to be associated with
during the you had the quarterback not showing up for you had it's more than just the Pastagate thing. The Pastagate thing happened because even under his view, some things were going down with the basketball head coach being fired.
If anything, it's a lot more the OU's issues with the NCAA, I would say it's like one of the bigger kind of trouble spots on his resume.
Really?
Yeah, I would. Stuff like having to take. What's that?
Well, I'm just trying Bomar, Kelvin Sampson,
Capel. Those 3. Let me put it to you like this: like somebody I remember around like 2010ish, talking with somebody who was an expert in NCAA governance, and I was like, well, OU's compliance now is crazy. Like it's so much different. It's underneath the president of the university. Yada yada, and they were like, I don't think you understand how bad the Bomar thing was. Like, given Oklahoma's history, that would have been like the kind of thing where the program would have been set back severely had they not have made a ton of compliance changes. And so like, I think that they've operated with that mindset ever since then, that like they had to make, and that's guided a lot of kind of decision making, I think, during that period.
Well, I have no doubt that that's true. I mean, this person that you talk to, they know what they're talking about. From what I remember, OU got their penalties immediately after the Bomar thing. And even with the Bomar thing, that was something that happened everywhere. And OU just stupidly got caught because some Aggie fan on like Texags knew about it and blabbed their mouth.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Are you ready for the new era of sports in Oklahoma? Want to be ready for some real Southern football? Kaizen Performance in Norman, Oklahoma is your spot for physical and mental growth. By empowering a lifestyle of constant, continuous improvement, Kaizen Performance's gym experience lends itself from the experienced training fanatics to those who want to make a positive change in their lives and everyone in between. Come see their new location at 158 Armstrong Court in Norman, Oklahoma. With experienced trainers who understand that every client has individual desires and needs, in-person and online customized training programs and nutrition plans, Kaizen Performance has everything to offer for you to meet your goals. Again, their new location is 158 Armstrong Court, Norman, Oklahoma, 73071. Seriously, Brady works out there, and so does Payton when he comes to home games. Come work out with us and get ready for the week-to-week grind of real Southern football. Kaizen Performance, Norman's own local gym where your goals are a workout away.
I mean, I hate to say, well, that happens everywhere. I mean, I'm just trying to say that to suggest Castigli-gone had it that's a kind of a bad spot with his tenure is the NCAA. I was not prepared for that.
Well, I mean, no, because I fuck the NCAA. I mean, I don't care about any of those rules or any of that stuff. But what I'm saying is that I don't blame Castiglione really for that. But what I'm saying is that those events had a significant impact on the athletic department. Like
you're right.
And so we got to figure out how we're going to account for that and how that factors in also to Castiglione's legacy. Because, I mean, again, I'm not sure Castiglione was the one calling all the shots and making all the decisions at that point when it came to how they reacted to those situations.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why when I introduced the unholy triumvirate, I put David Boren's name in there. I knew he was a big part of the problem. For football, I want to address that and make that very clear. We're talking about David Boren's negative influence upon the football program later in his tenure. Nothing else, please disregard. I mean, okay. That's certainly true. I mean, I don't really know where we can go from that other than, because I guess if people are out there listening and they've listened to us forever, they're probably expecting me to go, well, he should have been more outlaw with the NCAA, and then we would have won a national title at some point after the Bomar years, instead of going out of your way to put the compliance office under the president and doing all this outward stuff to prove to the NCAA that we're not Barry Switzer 1980s Oklahoma anymore or something like that. Because also at the time, I mean, USC was going through their Reggie Bush shit, and that stuff was also going on all over the place. They just happened to get caught. The reason why USC got in trouble so much, from what I remember, and maybe I'm wrong, Alan, they got in trouble because they thumbed their nose at the NCAA, actively did not help them, and just assumed that it would go away or that nothing would come of it. And they were wrong. And anytime you don't help the NCAA out when you've essentially been caught, that's when they really get you.
That's
Bomar
correct,
unless you're Oklahoma State.
Well, who cares? But I mean, Bomar got found out. Bob kicked him off that day. And I think immediately the NCAA kind of imposed some scholarship limitations, and then they vacated the 2005 season.
Yeah, yes, it was some along those lines. But the long story short is the final outcome of that whole thing. The NCAA said, here's what we're going to hand down. And David and OU was like, okay, we will play ball. They reorganized the athletic department. They put compliance under Boren. They took steps X, Y, and Z. And then the NCAA significantly diluted the penalties from what it was originally to be. USC didn't get that kind of treatment.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking, especially where Oklahoma's, again, where Oklahoma was and Oklahoma has done historically. You're looking at if the NCAA had the appetite. I mean, you're looking at death penalty style stuff. I mean, it's what's going on with the football program, what's going on with the basketball program at the time, and all that type of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things Oklahoma. You're not just fearing of the early '90s. you're fearing NCAA comes down once you become repeat offenders of those things. And Oklahoma at that point in time was obviously, I mean, obviously we're fans of this program, but obviously repeat offenders
And yeah,
of
very
stuff like
much
that.
in the crosshairs
Okay.
was the way it was presented to be.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, that's one large reason why you guys are here. Because honestly, like I'll admit some ignorance here. I mean, not that I'm ignorant to all this because I remember it. I just did not put this into my thought process equation when I'm discussing Joe Castiglione, because now that you guys are framing it that way, it makes all the more sense. However, I guess the pushback I would have is, once you've gone out of your way to help the NCAA out and you essentially save those 8 wins that you got in 2005, and, everyone's happy and there's no worse penalties that come down the pike because, like I mentioned with USC, they're still trying to dig themselves out of the hole that they dug for themselves by thumbing their nose at the NCAA investigation. They've never recovered from it.
Well, I mean,
They,
they're the same thing in Nebraska. They've never recovered from hiring multiple bad coaches back to back to back.
well, that's true. But
Pete
when
Carroll left because of the NCAA sanctions.
yeah,
True.
and I mean, and you can argue the same thing with like OU in the '80s. Like Switzer resigned in large part because of what was coming. It wasn't the only reason. He says so in his book, but it played a large role. It becomes harder to go back to work when you're going to be working with one arm tied behind your back. So as an institution, when you're working with one arm tied behind your back, it's hard to make the hire. When you're USC fighting uphill, having, scholarship limitations, if you get lucky and hire the next coach out of sheer luck, it doesn't matter. Like you'll eventually dig yourself out pretty quickly, but they were not lucky. And you make the wrong hire and that kind of digs a deeper hole and so on and so forth. OU got lucky in the 90s. And I say lucky in that the pairing of Bob Stoops and that staff with the players that were primarily already there, and then of course bringing in Josh Heupel, that was the perfect marriage. But Bob Stoops was not an out of nowhere hire. I mean, Alan, you have a better memory of this. He was probably the most coveted assistant coach in the country at that point. Like any Power 5 vacancy probably wanted Bob Stoops, and I think it was down to OU and Iowa, right?
It was down to OU and Iowa. I'm not sure if I'd say that any Power 5 vacancy or any major program vacancy would have wanted him, but I do think though that I'm not sure that OU was the kind of coveted job though that you might think of now compared to then.
Yeah, and that's where Joe Castiglione's expertise like really lended itself to attracting someone like Bob Stoops
I think
to
that's
OU because of the professional manner that he conducts himself in, the connections that he's made even at that point in his career. Like these are all good things. But I guess going back to the NCAA thing, like where I would push back is after you've kind of gone out of your way to make sure the NCAA doesn't slap you on the wrist any worse. That's when you kind of, okay, like we're here to like win football games. Fuck them, do whatever. And I don't even know if there's an example where OU skirted the rules. And hell, I think the Joe Mixon thing is a separate moral issue, like it's not an NCAA thing because he was suspended. So I guess in the eyes of the NCAA, like they didn't need to do anything with Joe Mixon. And that's why that whole chapter of OU football under Bob and Joe is really weird. And it's very weird. I don't like really thinking about it. But no, I mean, I'm glad you guys brought that up because I need some pushback. I know I'm not 100% correct. Like when I say all these things, like these are my opinions and these are the things that I feel. Overall, I feel like I'm correct, but not specifically correct.
Well, I think the other thing too is I think it became obvious the past few years that like I don't know. I think Joe Castiglione's vision of college athletics, I think it kind of came out with the whole deal with we wanted to play Nebraska at night, which became kind of a rallying point insofar as OU was getting tired of kind of carrying the Big 12 on its back, but I mean, he made a point of talking about all the things that they had planned for the game of the century to commemorate that at that game that then had to be scuttled because they moved it to noon instead of playing it at night. It's a very tradition type thing. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that college football is kind of built on, right? And I think that he was actually he probably appreciated that stuff more so than where college football is going now because, you made the comment like, any three of us would have moved OU to the SEC, whenever it was. And, but the thing is like, yes, but I don't think it's a great thing for college football that OU did that, right? I mean, like, I'm not sure that Joe C would look at that and say, this is a great thing. I think he'd say is a necessary thing based on what OU has to do to compete um, at a national championship level. And, I mean, that's kind of the past few years, I think, have kind of gotten to the point convinced me maybe, it's you need a different type of vision or leadership at this point, given that you made this call, and this is the way that the sport has gone, and there's nothing that can get the old stuff back.
Yeah. No, I mean, the interesting thing, the interesting thing is just simply that wherever you're trying to draw a line between like this is like the good part of Joe Castiglione's career, or if you're wanting to say the entire thing's good and Brady you're wrong, like all that's well and good. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you're at anywhere for a long time, you're going to have a range of success and a range of some failure. And because obviously, if you're somewhere for a long time, you've been very good. Nick Saban as a head coach, that's a complete and utterly like one of one alien type situation because he was elite basically forever as a head coach after he won his first national title at LSU, except for the time with the Dolphins, because of course. But I mean, I don't know. You guys took the wind out of my sails. I honestly did not even factor in the NCAA thing as, I would view that more as a David Boren thing. And I mean, David Boren's dead, so I don't want to write a Monday post burying him because he's literally passed on to the next dimension. But I mean, I don't know. Like, how much do we want to say that Joe Castiglione, and this is something we don't know, but how much do we want to say Joe Castiglione fumbled the early conference realignment period in the 2010s? Because again, that's a Boren thing. And that was him wanting to like, well, we'll go to insert, SEC, Pac-12, Big Ten here. We'll go, but you have to bring OSU with us. And all three of them were like, no, why? So they can wrestle? And then David Boren's like, well, then fine, because Oklahomans stick together. And it's just like, great, let's just come on, let's tie our hands behind our back once again and play with a bunch of regional schools whose sole mission in life is to play us close and to play Texas close. They will tell their grandkids about, like we had Caleb Williams beat and then he ripped the ball out of Kennedy Brooks's hands, but we had him beat. Grandson, I don't know what grandparents call their grandkids. I mean, Payton, as we start to wrap a bow on this conversation, because again, like blatant homerism, keyhillpod.com, and then the Patreon post, the Tuesday post, patreon.com/the keyhole for like, I guess, more in-depth thoughts, because we could spend 3 hours on this, I'm sure, but you guys don't want to listen to 3 hours of this. But as we wrap a bow on this, I mean, to the conversation, and this is like another topic that we could go off for 45 minutes or so. We don't need to, we can try not to do that. But to those that are out there, I might have already mentioned this, someone like this earlier in the show. But to people out there that are like saying like, "Ooh, there's the trouble afoot at OU. There's leadership change. That's not a good thing." And the writing's on the wall, and they're already getting negatively recruited into the ground. And if they go 7-5 or worse, Brent's going to be gone. I mean, what do you say to the overall negative reaction to Joe Castiglione's announcement? No, like, and I'm not going to throw myself into the negative aspect because I'm taking a very like OU fanatic viewpoint of it. He's good, but I have my bitching and moanings. So what do you say to all the general, like, this is not good for OU at football, at least because of this announcement?
Well, I don't know if there is a ton of I guess the one good thing you could say, right? Because I'm not for sure there is a ton of greatness or anything you can kind of really dig out of this. Oklahoma has still been on the back foot ever since Riley left. I don't know if Oklahoma has something in its back pocket to get it over the hump on this point in time. Every single year, it's been dealing with new head coach, losing a quarterback, having to fire an OC. Art Briles shows up on the campus. NIL stuff coming through. It's year after year. Oklahoma is having something ground level shaking its foundation, and it does seem to, if you're an outside in. I mean, if you're outside looking in, it does seem like Oklahoma's teetering at this point in time because it's year after year after year. Something's happening at the University of Oklahoma, or something's not happening, like not hiring the right OC to begin with, things of that nature. Um, if I were on, because again, we're all Oklahoma fans. That's going to be a thing they're going to say they're going to drink about now. Because I've been trying not to say things of that nature, uh, specifically for this podcast. Um, what you're talking about is saying Oklahoma is going full in depth in an NFL organizational structural model where you have an AD, you have a GM, and you have a vice president of operations, right? So you've got the GM who's looking at player development and player scouting. You've got the AD who's basically the money guy from like an outside money coming in, so helping get NIL deals, helping make sure things are being funded through donations, and obviously overseeing the rest of the sports programs. And then you have the VP who's maybe dealing with like staff contracts and things of that nature, right? From that side of it. So it's really, really democratizing that workload and creating a space to where there isn't small kingdoms from that side of it. Like you said, Bob reported to Boren. That won't happen now under the structure. The head coach is an employee of the football program, not that the head coach is working on his how he feels, how he sees fit. All right.
Yeah.
The old school days of college football programs hiring head coaches and saying you run the entirety of the university seem to be over at OU. And that's something that would be very interesting to see moving forward. I believe it to be the correct path moving forward for Oklahoma. And Joe C is the last of a dying breed from that style of AD. And I think he's seen that with because he refused to do this for Lincoln Riley. He refused to hand the keys over. He refused to, give him full run of everything, which is a benefit. I mean, long term, you could say it's a benefit for the program. And he does seem to realize he's going to have to hand over a lot of stuff if he were staying AD, and maybe that AD role isn't what he originally signed up for 27 years ago, and he's ready to hang it up at that point in time. So if I were an Oklahoma fan who's listening to this is a long-term play where the idea is Oklahoma is positioning itself for future success. Now, that does kind of suck because you want immediate success. I'm not going to lie there. I think we all do. We have to figure out a way to deal with that. But that's where I'm not losing a lot of sleep over this, is thinking Oklahoma is putting itself in a position for future success via this NFL model, NFL scouting, and looking for things, looking for unique ways to succeed at college football and be elite, with potentially not having to take the exact one path it's always taken to win a national championship, which is to sign more 5 stars than anybody else. Oklahoma cannot do that. We can have an argument about that. I do not believe Oklahoma could do that. I do believe they can take this more of a path with Nagy, more like how Michigan did. Again, I know it's potentially a bad thing because they're cheating. But if we've got the number one sign stealer in the nation, then hey, here we go. Finding ways to recruit well, but looking for your players to be developmental, right? Because if Oklahoma's signing top 10 classes, that means like half your class are 3 stars. Top 5 classes, that means like 25% of your stars are 3 stars. So you don't have as much developmental needs, quote unquote, as you need there. But if you're bringing in half your class as 3-star players, or around half, you need to make sure those are hitting. And so you need an NFL guy who's looking at physical traits and what you can build upon at that point in time. And I believe Oklahoma's suiting itself well for the future. Even more so, hot take, than somewhere like a Georgia, whose Kirby Smart seems to be extremely reluctant to anything of this nature moving forward,
Yeah.
of a future modern structure.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I'll say, in my opinion, I think that OU has enough talent on hand for this season to bridge us to that optimistic, hopeful level of greater success that this new organizational chart that they're building will start to yield in 2026, 2027, 2028. Like they have enough talent, quarterback, offense, defense, to win enough games to kind of right the ship, get the recruiting back on track, and help bridge us to that new era of OU football. Alan, anything else? And I wrote it down, Payton, but when we get to the recruiting topic of this podcast, I do want to talk about the whole OU recruiting philosophy thing that you brought up. But Alan, anything else?
Oh, no. I mean, I know I was talking about, Joe Castiglione pulling off something miraculous early in his tenure there at OU. But my point is largely that, I mean, OU is an institution. It's not one person. It's not Joe Castiglione or David Bourne or Bob Stewart or whoever's in charge now, right? The things that have made Oklahoma football so good for so long haven't changed, right? Just because the dynamics have not changed so significantly that OU is now in trouble. I don't look at it like that at all. I think that they need a operational and maybe a little bit of philosophical tweak inside the program, but the institutional will and that the drive to for the football program to succeed hasn't changed. And I think that one of the things that Joe Castiglione did in the beginning, from the very beginning, obviously, is harnessing that. And the next, whoever takes over and succeeds next, will do the same thing.
I guess one really quick exit question for the Joe Castiglione portion of the show. I'll ask you first, Payton. Should he have pressured Bob to do the thing that I wanted to do in 2014, 15? Should he have put that pressure on him? Or no?
I think it's well within. You're okay. I'm not going to talk about. Yeah, I think he probably should have put some pressure on him. I think he should have said, "Hey, the future." He should have had the future of the university. He should have been more loyal to the university than loyal to Bob Stoops. If he had, now the argument is, did he have the levers to put that pressure on him? Is a different thing. But if he had, I think you put some hard pressures on him at that point in time, and he did a couple years later. But it wasn't Mike. Obviously, there was a hard line in the sand drawn. He should have crossed that line.
Well, I mean, if he's going to get a statue at some point, high roll, then I'm going to assume that means he probably had some of the levers. Maybe not all of them, but enough. But, that's something we don't know. Alan, is it a cockamamie idea, pie in the sky idea of mine, or no?
Of course, no. I mean, if he had the ability to do that, but I just don't think I'm not convinced that he did. And, that's kind of a different story about organizational management.
All right, fair enough. And with that, we bid Joe Castiglione adieu, but he will still be the athletic director for the foreseeable future. Is it going to be Zach Selman? Anybody?
I mean, are you going to sign up for that the AD workshop class? Right?
Shouldn't Zach Selman? I mean, would you?
Might be helpful.
Would it be more helpful for him to do that than to be the athletic director of Mississippi State? What is Mississippi State? What is that? And I don't know if like a big first bullet point on your professional resume is I hired Jeff Lebby. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I did my former employer a solid by hiring Jeff Lebby.
Right? Yeah. No, I don't think Zach Selman's. I think that this entire process has them thinking about like a re-envisioning how the football program will work going forward, as well as within the entire maybe structure of the athletic department. So I get the feeling that I would not be surprised if the athletic director is not even like someone who's inside the college sports complex right now. I mean, it could be somebody, a different type of executive.
Any names? I mean, I personally want Hokut, and I wanted him before I remembered he actually had been at OU under Joe Castiglione for a handful of years in the early 2000s. I appreciate that he apparently is overseeing a school, do whatever is like by any means necessary without like going full Art Riles, breaking the law morally and ethically and all those things by staying relevant. Texas Tech is doing anything and everything that they can to be like at the forefront of the news and staying above water. And I'll be honest, I kind of want that give a fuck mentality from whatever the athletic director is going to do in the modern era, with GMs and front offices now. Like, I don't know how important the AD is going to be in the sense that we knew it previously. But at that very least, someone like that makes a lot of sense to me. But I mean,
See,
they know who they want.
I would not want Hocut because he's got a billionaire essentially funding what they're doing right now, and so like I think you need to take a different approach with OU personally.
Fair enough. Payton?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hoka would be interesting if he's able to take the oil and gas booster knowledge from Texas Tech and then leverage that to the oil and gas boosters of OU, and maybe they have like the same levers of power there to kind of get these guys to give more money. But I don't know. I mean, there's been some stuff. I know Ren from West Virginia has been talked about a little bit. I don't know how serious any of that stuff is. He's also an Oklahoma kid. I think there's going to be, as Oklahoma is, and Brady, as you hate it to be, there's probably going to be some Oklahoma connection, would be my assumption on that. But and maybe it doesn't matter because Josie's still going to be on the job for another 2 years. Kind of like walking through, helping out, being in there, kind of like how Bob was with Riley. Like he still had an office at university and was there to answer questions and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that specter of the AD is still going to be there. It's just up to the team to figure out how much, I guess.
Maybe there's something to be said about when Switzer resigned and there were some bad feelings between Switzer and the program and the leadership that was still at OU at the time, especially how they kind of tried to distance themselves from Switzer and kind of like, yeah, that was, that's old days now. We're nice now. Maybe there's something to be said about time away and time apart because of course, Switzer came back and was welcomed back to the program and everyone loves him and he's always welcome. Maybe Bob and Josie could have taken a note from that and just gone off and did something else. I'm still praying for the day that Bob Stoops becomes the head coach at Iowa. Please, God, please happen. Still waiting for it. Let's get into, I guess, one extra OU note. They announced that it's going to be John Mateer, R. Mason Thomas, and Robert Spears Jennings at SEC Media Day next week. I guess we'll do a little on-air production meeting, guys. I believe Brent talks on Wednesday. Is he talking on Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you guys remember?
I don't remember.
I cannot. Let's see. SEC, and I should know because I'm going to the damn thing next week. 2025 schedule. And we've got Monday. Brian can do Tuesday. Wednesday. He's talking Wednesday with Kalen DeBoer, Billy Napier, Jeff Lebby, and Brent Venables. Do we want to wait to record the show Wednesday evening or Thursday so that we can at least bounce off of whatever Brent says to the media? And I make no mistake, I bet a lot of questions are going to be about Joe Castigli-gone.
I mean, I think it would be smart, especially if you're going to be there.
Okay. Yeah, I going there for my job. It's not in a journalistic standpoint, but since I'll be there, if I'm able to, I'll try to like grab some old media friends and maybe record something at Media Day and put that out maybe on Patreon. So again, patreon.com/through the keyhole. But I guess tentatively, because we need to still talk to Matt, let's all plan for Wednesday evening or Thursday evening for the next free pod. So won't be out next Tuesday because of SEC Media Day. So makes sense. But let's move over to recruiting, not necessarily OU recruiting, but just college football recruiting, what it means for the sport and all those things. And of course, you're probably correct in where I'm going with this. But Texas Tech, like I mentioned with Kirby Hocutt as their athletic director, Texas Tech earned the services of a 5-star offensive tackle by the name of Felix Ojo, who was down to them Texas, and I believe he was on was he coming to visit OU like on an OV, or was he on an OU list at all?
There had been talk of that, and I think then he backed away from that. So
Because of Deacon Schmidt?
presumably, yeah.
Okay. Well, also, I mean, we've not even talked about that little clip of Jim Nagy that's making the rounds about the whole, like, if there's a 5-star and a 3-star and we value them the same way, or our scouting says that they're essentially the same player, then we're going to go after the 3-star because they're cheaper. And of course, there's just a mountain of takes that kind of creates. And I understand. And this is all brand new. This is all new. I am trying to go into the GM Jim Nagy experience with an absolute open mind and not making harsh judgments. Trying to take it, whatever they say, whatever he says, I'm trying to be like, okay, I will believe you until proven otherwise. So that's how I view that. If we want to talk about that later, we can. But with Felix Ojo's commitment to Texas Tech, it was announced or leaked or reported that anywhere from $2.5 to $5 million was the amounts to get Ojo to sign with Texas Tech. And I think the big concept from this reporting was, it's not necessarily he's going to be receiving $2 to $5 million. It's going to be, in the event that the revenue share pot increases, he will receive a percentage increase. So he's getting like 5 to 8% of their cap. And I guess, like, Payton, the big question here is twofold. What does this mean for the sport? What does it mean for OU? And, like, to frame the OU topic, I'll just say it this way. If there is a 5-star out there and they are down to us, Texas, and Texas Tech, or Baylor, or Oklahoma State, or whomever, I would rather them go to not Texas. Go to Texas Tech and get wasted. Not with alcohol. Go waste your talent. Please don't get developed because they don't have great coaching. And really, like, this to me is a way to weed out 5-star busts. I mean, they already had the receiver, Micah Hudson, was that his name?
Yes.
And they continue to have him.
And
Yes.
they continue to have him because he
Yes.
bounced over to A&M to get another portal bag, and he just has proven to not be nearly as good as his high school rating suggested that he would be. So I would kind of prefer most 5-stars to go to the Texas Techs of the world so that they can make some money early on. But then if they prove to actually be good, that's when they can transfer to OU. That's when they can transfer elsewhere. But really, Payton, what does this mean for the sport as a whole? And then again, like, what does it mean for OU moving forward if this is the GM philosophy that we are going to be taking in terms of recruiting?
I believe, if I have it right, reading stuff, his deal is contingent upon his deal is a combination of revenue sharing NIL deal, the NIL deal taking up the larger part of it, and like you said, unless there's some sort of revenue sharing increase, in which then the deal is lessened on the NIL side at that point in time and becomes more revenue sharing for his deal. Which, if you are a player, you want as much of that money being revenue share as possible, because that's for sure year to year it's going to happen, and you can get that in contract. The NIL stuff becomes a little bit difficult on that time because you're talking about deals that have to go through a clearinghouse, and is this market value, and things of that nature, right, from that side of it, because it can be play for play and all that type of stuff. I don't think this clearinghouse is really going to knock anything down, but it is at least a legal shield for these teams and programs to move forward on that side of it. What does this mean moving forward? It just means you need to have a guy who understands, like NFL does, the salary cap is fake. You have to figure out how to push things down the line and things of that nature. It will be very interesting if we ever see any, like, deferred monies or anything of that nature for some of these contracts. I said things of that nature in a real serious way at this point in time.
There you go.
I'm not for sure where it's going to go. I think on like the macro side of it, it's very interesting to see how these deals are kind of coming together. On the micro side, I don't know how much of this is going to push the sport forward on this. I see this mainly as a school in the Big 12, a school in uh, uh, a conference which is potentially going to be relegated to a second class citizen in the playoff discussion, potentially if they do the protected automatic qualifiers, who's needing desperately to put itself in position to where if there's another shakeup, it can allow itself to be at least a name in a hat in which one of these conferences may want to pull them out of at that point in time. And they all of a sudden have really leveraged some people with a lot of money to push forward for their university.
I mean, Alan, it's a brave new world out there. And these, I mean, I don't know how many of these specific examples have come to light, or if there are times where I feel like I know things, but I can't really pinpoint if they're like primarily agreed upon conjecture by fans that are heavily online, or if it comes from actual reporting from journalists, if that makes sense, because sometimes I see something so much that I'm like, okay,
Right. Yeah.
which always do your homework, everybody. If you hear stuff, don't take it, don't think that it's the truth. Always do your homework. But I mean, I'm still just kind of dumbfounded by like, I understand Tech's point of view. And especially when you consider that they saw immediate success in, albeit a much less, I hate to frame it this way, but softball is not the revenue generator that football is. It's not any less important to those that love softball or that play softball, coach in softball. Like, I don't mean it in that way, but they paid Kennedy like over $1 million to go there. And then they go immediately to the College World Series. They beat OU in the semis. They quote unquote slay the dragon for good, I guess. Okay. And they get to the national title series. They don't win it, but I mean, otherwise Tech would not be there. They would not be in the news. They would not be at the forefront of college sports at that point in the calendar. So they see that and they're like, why don't we apply that to football? Oh, we just got a 5-star from primarily over our buddies down in Austin. That's good. Can we ride this, to some other players, to some other positions? Hey, like they're getting some steam to maybe get Cooper Hackett, the 2027 5-star out of Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. So like, I understand it from their standpoint, but I mean, this plays itself out, right? I mean, naturally, because Tech either succeeds and they continue to do this, or they don't, and players are just like, I mean, I'd love the money offer, but you guys just clearly are not good.
Well, I mean, I guess the way I look at it is if, granted, this is a level of planning that I don't necessarily attribute to any 17-year-old, but I mean, I guess I look at it and say, hey, you give me $5 million for over 3 years guaranteed, I'll punch my clock for 3 years and then I'm on easy street, right? Like, I mean, I'm not the kind of personality wise, I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, well, I'd rather have 100 million. No, 5 is good, but I think that, well, to start off, okay, from Tech's perspective, when you got a billionaire who's willing to invest this way, I mean, you might as well take advantage of it if that's the case. Do I think it's like a sustainable business model? Well, I don't know. I mean, this is essentially what Oregon did. I mean, Phil Knight has been in it for the long haul. And they've now look at where they are. I mean, they consider one of the better programs in the sport. So I mean, it's certainly possible. What I do wonder is something though I was kind of alluding to in the beginning, like the college football has operated like performance in a lot of ways, or peak performance has been driven by the idea of you come here to make your way to the NFL. And at some point, the money, I mean, if it continues this way, the money gets to a point where it might be like, oh, okay, well, like do I really need to develop? I mean, I've got this to fall back on. If I don't make the NFL, what does that really tell me? Or what does that do? I mean, some people, like I said, will look at it and be like, okay, I don't want $5 million, I want 100 million. But, as the money keeps growing like that, that's the kind of stuff that I wonder about. Like, are you going to be taking a chance by investing that much money in a 117-year-old player? Last thing on this one, Tech is taking a page out of Texas's playbook here, right? Because Texas in what was it, 2022 or with that class, whatever, they started the pancake factory thing where they were, giving out automatic signing bonuses to offensive linemen. That's clearly what Tech is trying to do here by building up an offensive line, building up the trenches. So then they'll have a program that will I guess try to, it's a way to build up your program to compete on a bigger stage. So, I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen because I'm not even sure if the House settlement will end up standing. I mean, who knows? Like.
I mean, I guess jumping off what I said earlier about how this affects OU. I mean, obviously we want all the best players. We're not realistically going to get them, but do you guys both agree? Like, if you're not going to get them, then let them go to Texas Tech and waste their time or be great. But if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound or whatever? Like one of those situations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mean, I don't know how good Ojo really is. I have no clue. But if he's a coveted offensive lineman, I'd certainly rather him go to Tech than Texas because he's not going to see him then.
And let's not confuse this too. I mean, this happens immediately after he gets shoved into a locker by the presumed Oklahoma commit at some of his like camps and stuff, and immediately after that, it's tech this, tech that, tech this. So it could have been easily as something like, "Hey, um, I'm now going to secure my retirement money at the school that now my price they're willing to
Yeah.
pay my price,"
Yeah,
which Ohio State or Texas may have come back to him and said, on second thought, this commitment bonus may not be as high as it was 24 hours ago.
No, I mean, I don't wish anything ill of the player, of the kid. This is just more so a insult towards Texas Tech. They had fucking Patrick Mahomes and they were a 7-5 program. So they go off, King, go have fun, do whatever you can to survive out there in the wild, wild west of college football. That isn't at the, I guess, big kids table. Whoa, you was 6-7 last year. You guys suck. It's like, yeah, I know. But like I said a few episodes ago, you sucked last year. We don't suck forever. So enjoy it while it lasts, because it probably won't last that long. Knock on wood. I do want to, I guess, maybe touch on the Nagy thing a little bit, guys, before we get out of here. We've talked about it in our group chat, but like the idea, like the thing that he said of like, if there's a 5-star and a 4-star, or a 5-star and a 3-star, and they both, we kind of view them the same way, or we're probably going to go after the 3-star or the 4-star because they're going to be, and this makes me feel gross to say out loud, but cheaper. Their services will be cheaper than the 5-star. I tend to think that there is going to be nuance in that philosophy. Let's say that there is a 5-star offensive lineman from Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. I think that they will, and they also see like a 4-star from Colorado or a 4-star from San Diego that they think just as highly of. I think that they will play the game a little bit longer into the process in order to ensure that the local kid stays home, because you don't want to lose those battles, because recruiting is, half of it is just optics. Because I mean, what do you hear Sooner Scoop and them say on their podcast every other episode? It's that Brent Venables and this staff are fighting such an uphill battle that Josh McCuistion can't remember the last time OU on the trail was fighting negative recruiting to this extent. And it's just because primarily of one season, but the other 6 and 7 season, no doubt, is probably baked into that equation as well. So I would say to the OU fans that hear Nagy say that and panic, I would just, this isn't the same as Mike Gundy punting on recruiting. This isn't the same as cruise control era Bob Stoops on recruiting. Like, this isn't the same thing. Just like I said earlier, with the whole GM thing being brand new to all of us, I would just like wait for him to fail before you start bitching about it. Like, this is the thing where I think it's okay to wait before anything, because I think we all have gut feelings about Brent Venables, and it's because we've been fans for a long time. We kind of know what a good coach and a bad coach look like. And Brent Venables, depending on your personal opinion, has a lot of characteristics of either or. And that's not a very comfortable position being going into year 4 with an OU head coach. But Payton, I'll start with you. I mean, you hear that. I think you kind of understand, like, here comes like the discourse, like kind of the eye roll discourse with a statement like this. But since it's kind of played out and been like over a week or so old, I mean, how do you interpret it? Just right off the bat.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And this is something that I've been going on in my mind on a couple of my runs and stuff, kind of walking through this thing, and I potentially may have been confusing myself. And Alan and I talked a little bit about on our Discord channel. That's just a private Discord channel. It's not public for you guys. We were playing shows and stuff like that.
I'm
And
not even on it, guys, so don't worry.
yeah. I just don't know if it makes sense to be this hardlined at that point in time, because college football versus like NFL is so much different at that point in time. The power structure and who has that leverage changes. There's too many teams going to offer too much money. You have a chance Texas Tech randomly offers somebody 200% more than they should. Things, it really kind of blows things out of the water. And as we've seen, with some emails and text messages, it's much easier to collude in the NFL than it is in college football. There's too many teams, too many levels and programs who are willing to backstab each other, or just do something to keep, like when Texas A&M was like recruiting super well, a lot of that was to keep talent away from other teams, not necessarily needing that talent themselves, and that caused that like a ripple effect to a certain degree. I just don't know if it's that smart to be that hard line, to play that much of a money ball um, with this stuff. Like, obviously there's the dogs. Sorry guys. Obviously it's a way that he's communicating it, to kind of talk to agents and talk to players, and be very vocal on Twitter. I remember he was saying something like, "Oh, some of these people's family aren't serious about development and things of that nature," right after some offensive lineman had committed somewhere else. And it's like, I don't know if I want my GM to be like a reply guy on Twitter. I'm not for sure if that's beneficial for the program long term. Um, but the issue that I have is, and Alan, I'll walk. Let's walk through this a little bit, because I was trying to explain it. But like, let's say Oklahoma for a 4-star or a 5-star defensive tackle. Let's just use that position because it's a position Oklahoma would like to have, and it's a 5-star, so they're the best. They say the cap we're willing to spend is $750,000, right? And we know that's within the realm of reasonability, because they reportedly, or maybe the rumor mill, paid Demonic Williams about 800K. So let's say 750 for a 5-star defensive tackle. And Oregon says we'll pay you $1 million. Right. So then you lose out on that player, but you stayed stuffed it there. But your internal rankings of that player is that he's a 95 out of a 100, right? But you're in on a 4-star guy who you've rated an 87 out of 100. So there's potential that, what's that called? Variance. What am I trying to say? Margin of error, in which the 4-star player could be just as good as the 5-star player, so the five-star player could not be as good, or so on and so forth. And you have a top level of that of $500,000. So, if you're able to sign that player, theoretically, you signed a similarly rated player, but then you quote unquote saved $500,000 at that point in time. My only concern of something of that nature is the moment that 5-star defensive tackle signs somewhere, or 5-star quarterback signs somewhere, everyone else's value going down the line, in my personal opinion, if I were an agent, increases. Because it's just the scarcity of the product is happening now. You have one less opportunity to sign a blue chip player at that position, which is usually a position of need at that point in time. So and then you end up having to overspend, and you can kick down the line, and you end up signing a 3-star player who you say it's 150K, but you end up signing for 300, so you overpay for that. But even within that overpay, you're saving close to $1 million or whatever. So maybe that is a long-term solution. I just worry about playing in that much hardball in a situation where these players have almost all of the leverage. And I guess the only saving grace this could be have for Oklahoma is if they're able to get more players like Jaden Jackson and Nagy's able to identify more players like Jaden Jackson, because we're living in a world where Oklahoma signed a 3-star player who's playing uh, as a day 2 draft pick, while the 5-star player is playing at a 7th round draft pick. So I mean, there is the variance there that could happen. You can end up saving a lot of money, but once that happens, you have to readjust your expenditures. Obviously, Jaden Jackson's been taken care of monetarily for performing it that way, and then you are paying via your revenue share performance side. That's a really, really long way of saying I think the scarcity and the rarity of these blue chip players at these extremely important positions, where either it be defensive end, defensive tackle, quarterback, um, it may not be smart to like hard line dead set say we will not go over this number um, when you're trying to set a market which no one else seems to care about setting that market.
Well, I mean, I think everybody cares about. I mean, look, money again. Trees don't grow to the sky, right? Money is an infant. By once you get into a bidding war or what have you, if you don't have like an anchor price to abide by, like that's how you get taken to the cleaners. I mean, I think all I hear Nagy saying is we're not going by the recruiting services recruiting rankings. We're evaluating all these players on our own, putting our own grades on them. And when you see players going to, Texas or Ohio State or whatever, you know what kind of financial waters you're swimming in at that point. That's all I'm getting out of this. So to me, I don't know if I mean, if it's a matter of saying a hard line. I mean, you negotiate salary in that case. You have, a band or whatever, and you just stick to it. That's it. This is the point of having a GM in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, overall, this GM's new until we start losing battles that I think we should have fought and literally just going the cheap route. Because that's kind of the implication that people are kind of throwing throwing at OU, is that OU is just trying to moneyball their way to success.
Which is not stupid. No.
Yeah. Or they're trying to just, they're broke Oklahoma, so they can't afford the services of like the actual elite talent. So to ever think OU's ever going to be good again is silly. Yeah, I'm gonna let this play out because none of us know how GMs work in college football still, and we're not going to know for a few more years at the very least. So, it is what it is. But I guess that kind of spiderwebs into this thing that Payton, you said in our Discord, and you said earlier on the show, and I just wanted to bring it up as I guess our last topic before we get out of here. But I just want to see if I have it right in your what you're implying, where you suggest that, well, OU's not going to be, they're not going to recruit at the level of like a Georgia or an Alabama, so they should just go the Michigan route. To me, it it doesn't make a lot of sense to suggest that, and the reason why is because, well, OU, when they were winning national championships, they were not recruiting at the Georgia and the Alabama level. They were not putting together that era's
Nobody was
back to,
recruiting. No one was recruiting at that level.
yeah. Even as they got into the 80s, when recruiting started to be a little bit more followed, in the late tenure of the Switzer era. I mean, Switzer was one of the best recruiters in the country, but I mean, SMU, A&M, Texas, Bama, Miami, UCLA, they were all recruiting at high levels. At Penn State, Ohio State, they were all recruiting at a very high level. Tennessee, and so like it's hard to say who was like the Bama and the Georgia of those days. So I don't think OU needs to recruit at that level in order to win a national championship. You know, they don't need to put together back to back to back top 5 classes. With that said, we should be a top 10 recruiter. And if we're not a top 10 class, we need to be 11 or 12. And it's because, well, we're taking less players in this cycle or because of some reason. Oh, we already have an awesome quarterback, so we're not going to take a 4-star or 5-star that could really elevate our class ranking. There should just be that. Oh, you should be a top 10 recruiter. And if you're a top 10 recruiter year in and year out, you're going to be in the conversation to compete for a title. You should recruit like Michigan. And this is where I kind of want to make sure that I'm right. Michigan, they recruited the way that they always have recruited when they've been good. They win in the trenches. They win with defense. They win with physicality. They win by boring you to death, but just having the strongest physical team and having like some X factors, like at some skill positions that kind of tip the game into their favor. That's been Michigan's MO every time in every era that they've ever been good. And so what I'm trying to say is OU doesn't need to do anything drastically different. They don't need to build their team like Michigan did. They just need to get back to what they're good at, which is you get the best players from the state of Texas. You win your fair share of battles against Texas for the Billy Simses, the Adrian Petersons. You know, you win your fair share of battles and ensure that those players come north of the Red River. You nationally recruit because you're OU and you can do that. You build through the trenches, and OU is its bread and butter is they have their superstars, but they are also a developmental program. So I just want to make sure that I have that right in my head, or if I'm mischaracterizing your thought, then here you go.
Well, I want to have some bad news for you. If you have a GM who's inherently saying we have a much different recruiting and evaluation process than some of these public recruiting and evaluation services, and this allows Oklahoma to find efficiencies in the margins for its quote unquote Moneyball era, it will be signing worse publicly rated classes than they were before. Right? I mean, they are saying our 3-stars, we are evaluating them at a higher level than what they are being evaluated at. And because these other rating systems are helping set a market, we are able to find an efficiency monetarily, financially at that point in time. So I would argue Oklahoma is going to be flirting at that top 10 level, but they are not going, this is not going to be how it was in the past, where it's going to be like Oklahoma signed a top 5 class and a huge media push and all that type of stuff. It's going to be Oklahoma found a bunch of gems in which no one else found. And we're developing them and we're going there. And then that's not saying a 5-star super player isn't, they're not going to say, yeah, that dude sucks, we don't want him. You're going to want those guys. But it does seem like they are saying we are going to get the cheaper player when we can, and if they're similarly rated, in which we do not have to get into a money fight over, because we believe in long-term success and needing this money to build an entire roster of 85 football players at that point in time.
But guys, I mean, like players who are rated, who are 5-star caliber players, right? They're rare, right? That's the point of them being
there's
a
32 of them a
5-star.
year. Yeah,
So
there's 32
we're not
a year.
like this is this player's a 3-star by the service and we have him rated as a 5-star or whatever. I mean, chances are, like, you see a 5-star player and everybody's going to agree this player's a 5-star. Like,
Correct.
So what? I mean, I think that what they're saying. I mean, but there's always room for mistakes in those evaluations. So maybe they're not going to. Maybe they have the guys rated differently. I don't know. I think that the idea going forward, we're going to have to recalibrate our entire perception of what a recruiting class is, because now everybody's essentially working with at least the same starting point of a budget. And so, I mean, you might not have as much money to spend on wide receiver this year as you did last year or stuff like that. I really don't know, but like, I mean, we also have to figure out what the real cap is, if there is a cap. I don't really think there is at this point.
No
So,
cap.
I mean, yeah. So, like, think about it. And I think I don't know. I'm thinking about more along the lines of like recruiting classes now is more about how you're allocating your budget as opposed to how many guys you're landing and stacking up in different spots, all that.
Yeah, and I think that's something. So what I was trying to say about the Michigan way is, and I was trying to explain it earlier on in the thing is, Oklahoma is going to be looking at how do we find traits in which translate to the next level. And if you have a good coach that can, in a developmental football staff, you hopefully that will translate um, while they're still in college, right? So my point of the Michigan thing is saying you had a successful NFL head coach at that point in time, NFL defensive coordinator. You had multiple NFL guys on that staff who knew what NFL players look like and knew what they were able to do physically. And we're talking about, I'm getting into the weeds about this stuff. Like, I hate sound stuff, but when you really see the NFL draft guys and the scout guys, they're talking about ankle mobility. They're talking about can he sit with his hips? They're really talking about really, really minute things of can these players physically manipulate their body into certain structures or whatever. And if you have a guy like that who is scouting for the Senior Bowl and is scouting for NFL traits and things like that, I think that means when they bring in a 3-star, it's less of a roll of a dice, right? They're rolling a D4 instead of a D20 or something of that nature, right? I mean, they think they have something there that will develop along the lines of a Jaden Jackson as opposed to a guy who's just stays on a kickoff team. That's
Yeah.
my hope on that side of it, is that you're building guys who evaluate for the next level, and you're saying use that skill. It's the only reason why you bring Nagy in. You're saying use the skill set in which you evaluate guys going to the next level and do that here. Because I think there is a big difference, obviously, from the scouting when it comes from high school to college. It's a total utter crapshoot because you have like 5,000, 10,000 players for recruiting every single year. So it's total complete crapshoot. And if you can find someone who's able to do that, you can get away without maybe having to overspend like a Texas A&M or Ohio State or whoever at that point
Yeah.
in time.
Yeah, and I mean, I would always just suggest when it comes to recruiting, like getting top 10 classes each year. I mean, that doesn't guarantee shit. It puts you if you have a good coaching staff, it puts you in the conversation because you know that the development is going to be there. And if those players prove to be as good as their high school billing, then the more classes you stack, the the better your roster is going to be and the better your depth's going to be. That's just how it's going to work. At the same time, there are programs out there that, in my opinion, they make their hay by making noise in recruiting, whether it be portal or
Yes.
high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And this is them winning their national championship. Is Texas Tech got a 5-star over Texas? Like this is their season
Yeah.
because they know they can't fucking tackle. They know that even in the Big 12, they might win 7 games. They could go undefeated, but they don't know because it's the Big 12. It's a crapshoot. OU is not in the business of we got a recruit that you wanted. We are the champions. Like, no. That's just step one of a multi-step process that ultimately, hopefully, leads to a national championship. So we're in this for a much longer haul. And at the same time, I think when people hear the Nagy thing, I think they just assume that every recruit in question, OU is just going to say there is a 3-star that is just as good. Let's go find him. Because how often is their scouting department going to overlap with like the general consensus of recruiting services? Like Bo Bentley is highly thought of, and I guess their scouting department just happened to agree. I would imagine that they're going to have faith in their scouting department, but I'm also going to have faith that for the most part, recruiting services are going to have the same hit rate that they've always had, which it's just fairly inconsistent. But at the end of the day, even though we all know that it's inconsistent, we all want OU to have 5 stars and 4 stars and not to have a bunch of 3 stars and no stars in their recruiting class. I don't think that this guarantees that they're going to do that. I think that there might be some examples where they try to make the efficient call. But I think for the most part, they're going to see what On3 views as a high-end 4-star and say, yeah, that's a high-end 4-star, and go recruit them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one other thing to keep in mind here is the point of the scouting is also to screen out the players who you do not deem to be worth that value, right?
Yeah.
So that's also an important thing here, knowing who not to overbid on, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, who are OU's?
Now, I will say Brent got what I think the fifth rated class and the seventh rated class back-to-back years to start. And I'm not for sure Oklahoma has like 5 NFL players on its team right now. So I mean, sometimes the number doesn't correlate. Maybe we should start Maybe you should start looking at the year-to-year NFL draft results and saying how well did that recruiting class really turn out, and is there a correlation with the games won at that point in time?
Yeah,
and there's a reason why the scouting people don't do look backs very often.
I don't, and maybe someone does. I don't know why they haven't kind of transitioned to lumping the portal class in with the recruiting class and having like a combined grade, because I mean, the 22 and 23 classes, yeah, like you're right, Payton. There's not a lot of NFL talent like confirmed on this roster just yet. 2025 can prove that wrong, but as of right now, you're right. But it's weighed down by the fact that half of those classes sucked or they've left because they sucked. And the offensive players are primarily who I'm talking about. But whether it be recruiting or portal, like I think the hit rate for Brent has been slightly higher with the portal guys and not as high as the recruited players out of high school because of the offensive side of the football. The 23 class is just so bad. Yeah, it's a wacky world out there with college football. I think I had a thought, unless you guys knew where we were going. I mean, we've been at this for an hour and a half, over an hour and a half. Almost 2 hours, actually. Is that right? God dang. That's what happens when your AD for 28 years announces his retirement. Is there anything else, guys, that we want to say before we get out of here and call it a day?
Nah, man, I'm good. We hit on a lot.
Yeah. Apologies for the long episode, guys, and co-hosts, but sometimes the content demands it. But yeah, I guess we will, like we said earlier, we will try to effort the free pod on Wednesday evening or Thursday, just depending on availability. I will be in Atlanta for my job, doing tourism things, but I will be there. So, and I'd imagine I'll have some downtime to rub some elbows with some old media friends and, of course, have downtime afterwards. So if I'm able to get Trammell or Hoover, Ryan, or whomever's down, Eddie, whoever's down there, if I'm able to get them for a pod, probably throw that on Patreon while you guys wait for the free one. So patreon.com/throughthekeyhole, keyholepod.com. That one's the free one for Alan's blatant homerism column. And then 5-star rating and reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to help the show out. We greatly appreciate it. But hopefully Matt is able to join next week, but if not, he'll be back at some point. But for Matt Burton, for Payton Guthrie, Alan Kenny, and myself, Brady Trantham, everybody, thank you so much for listening to Through the Keyhole. Until next time.
Let me go to it. Oh my God. Stop recording. Stop.